Welcome, friends, again in the channel. And today's topic is again another different one: English language teaching. There are various topics on it, however, this is significant for your syllabus too. Now, here we are going to teach about English language teaching with its classifications. These are the six parts that we have to deal with specifically. And today's topic is the first one, that knowing the learner. Now, the first and foremost duty of a teacher is to understand their learners. Without understanding their learners, a teacher cannot be a teacher, neither can he be a good motivator of the students or the learners. Now, this understanding has indeed a process. The process comes in the first way, knowing the learners, and secondly, gather complete informations about the learner. So if you do not know your learner, you cannot teach, and as I said, that you cannot motivate. On the other hand, if you have to gather complete informations about your learner, this will serve you as a learner's profile. This is also called a learner's profile. And what does this learner's profile do? This basically serves as a database for the teacher, and this database actually includes demographic informations about the learner and their personal characteristics. For example, if you mention the name of a learner, the learner gets interest in it, and he becomes excited that the teacher knows my name. So there, his motivation, that means the teacher's motivation, is transferred to the learner, and the learner will get to know that what he has to do, because the teacher indeed knows his or her name. The learner basically feels delighted. Therefore, this duty of a teacher serves as a significant part of knowing the learner, because a teacher has to understand what his or her duty actually. Now, moving on to the next slide, we have to understand the conventions of writing. There are two parts of the conventions of writing. One is outward factors, another is inward personal traits. In the outward factors, these are the factors we have to understand one by one. Do not worry. In the next slide, I am going to make all of these topics clear. And in inward personal factors, these are the five parts. So, five and five parts, total 10 parts. We have to discuss each one step by step. Without again wasting time, moving forward to the outward factors, the conventions of writing in the outward factors, the first comes the age. The age of the learner becomes the one significant point. Why? It determines the grading material. Also, it indicates the methodologies that should be used in teaching. The younger learners need experienced teachers to teach them, whereas older learners become autonomous in their learning. Second one is the gender. It is often noticed that the female learners do not get the privilege just like the male learners in different parts of our society, especially in the village areas. Now, the duty of the teachers is to remove the barriers between the learners, a female learner and the male learner. Should not be any barrier between them in learning procedure, in learning language. The teacher must provide the encouragement, the enthusiasm, the need in order to understand a learning lesson. The third is here the parentage. Understanding more about learners' families and parentage is a significant part of this learning process. Think about the first generation learner. They cannot get the motivation enough to learn. So the teacher has to motivate them in order to teach them in a better way, and the learner should get the materials or the teaching lessons properly. The teacher should not only motivate the learners but also the parents, so that they learn or understand the value of learning English language. Therefore, parentage becomes a significant point. Fourth one is the location. This point is also as important as the earlier one, parentage, because most of the times what happens, the learners spend time in their familiar atmosphere. Now, think about the location. In urban areas, learners do not get enough privilege. Learners from urban areas get better advantage and privilege than the rural areas. So the teacher has to adopt suitable methods or priority to teach the learners from different locations. In rural areas, he or she has to be more careful, adaptive, and productive. On the other hand, because there are so many supports that the urban learners get, so it should not be that important to provide enough materials to the learners from urban areas. So it also depends on the location. The teacher has to understand this very carefully. The last part is the ethnicity. Ethnicity of the learner marks their cultural identity as well as their social background. In order to understand the learner better, the teacher has to understand the ethnicity of the learner. There is indeed the ethnic diversity of the learners. One teacher should be aware of this fact that the learner from ethnic minorities face difficult challenges to learn. Hence, they need greater understanding and support from the teacher. So, these are the conventions of writing outward factors. Now, moving on to the next part of the conventions of writing, the inward personal traits. And what are these? The first one is the learning styles and preferences. Now I'm jumping a step again. Here, the inward personal traits suggest that each learner has a unique learning methods. For example, these are the learning methods that a learner has to have: visual, spatial, auditory, logical, kinesthetic, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. Therefore, these are the learning styles that a teacher also has to understand while teaching the learners. This will help them in understanding their learners as well the learning strategies. In this case, a learner may show their combined interest either in visual, auditory, or spatial kinesthetic, etc., etc., to point out their strength in learning. Now, this is important for a teacher as well as a learner too, because it will help eventually in understanding, and it also will help in their growth of understanding, the comprehensibility, their level of maturity, etc. So teacher has to understand these probable causes or the preferences of the learner so that the teacher may help the learner in a better way and in a profitable way. For example, if in a class major of the learners show the preference of visual learning, the teacher therefore can incorporate more visual learning methods like charts, posters, audiovisual clips, etc. Now coming back again in this page, the first point that we have already discussed. The second point is learners' prior learning. In this age of multidisciplinary system or actions or teaching, a learner's prior learning is significant because if a learner previously knows something, it will be better for the learner to know upcoming subjects in a better way. The learner can grasp the lesson very quickly. Thus, prior learning is very significant. The third one is literacy and numeracy. As it is earlier discussed that if a learner has the prior learning system or if the learner already has learned something, it will be better for the teacher as well as for the learner. Now, here the literacy and numeracy suggests that if the learner knows the skill of writing or reading or the numbers, it will again be better for the learner to understand the upcoming studies in a profitable way or in a better system or comprehensive way. This basic knowledge will lead the learner to understand LSRW. That means L for listening, S for speaking, R for reading, and W for writing, and the basic mathematical equations. If the learner knows these things, then the learner will be in an advantageous process. Next point is the learner's needs. In order to understand the needs of a learner, the teacher must know their social and emotional needs for better understanding, and the teacher should act accordingly. For example, if a learner or the family of the learner has not the enough money to provide for the education of the learner, the teacher then can step in and make the parents or guardians understand about the value of education as well as the learning process or the significance or importance of learning language and the impact on the learner's future, how this will affect or how this will improve the learner. The teacher can make it clear to the parents. The last one is the learner skills. To acquire the proficiency in English language, the learner has to master these four skills that L, S, or W that I have already mentioned earlier. Here, the teacher can motivate the learner to understand and learn better these four aspects so that the learners can build their existing strengths, and the teacher must provide the knowledge and background so that the learners may extend their strengths to learn further and try to acquire the other language skills. Thus, these are the conventions of writing and inward personal traits. Now, moving on to the question section, these are the questions that I have selected or categorized of 5 and 10 marks, or one of the 15 marks is question that you can practice and from the resource. This is the resource that I have taken materials from, that you can read the text or go through the video. So, whichever is profitable to you. Thank you very much for your cooperation and watching this video till to the end. Stay healthy, stay blessed. We will be back with the second part very soon.